Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Stirrups and Spirits. On today's episode, we're going to be talking with Karen Locke, bourbon woman extraordinaire and author of Bourbon Bells and Whiskey Women. And she's also going to be telling us about a new project that she's got in the works. And if you are in the bourbon industry, as I have said in the preview video, you are going to want to know about this new project she's got coming up. So here it is. Enjoy. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button after you have watched this video. I hope you enjoy it. And as always, thanks for tuning in. So, Karen, welcome to Stirrups and Spirits. I'm so happy to have you on the show. And we're going to be talking about this book that you have written that is amazing, Bourbon Bells and Whiskey Women. Here it is.
Thank you. I love that book.
My personal copy. I've read it. I don't know how many times. It's such a great book, such a wonderful resource. Tell us, what was your inspiration for this book?
Okay, so my husband's cousin, Lee Kennedy, owns a distillery south of Nashville called Leaper's Fork. And for years, I thought I didn't like whiskey. And it was the holidays, and Lee was releasing his first rye, and everyone was trying it. And I was like, well, I don't drink whiskey, but I want to be supportive. Everybody's having a little, so I'm going to try it too. And I realized I loved it. And that made me a little bit like go down the rabbit hole. Why for years did I think I didn't like whiskey? But I tried something Lee made, and all of a sudden I discovered I loved it. And so part of that research was like annoying people to death at the distillery. And one of the women I met at the time was their mash cooker. Her name was Kendra Anderson. And she was just a light. I mean, just a light. I mean, she was so full of energy and excitement about what she was doing every day. And she had the hardest job in the still house. But it just did not diminish her enthusiasm at all. And side note, that enthusiasm has carried her. She is now, she's the production head for the distillery. She's running the whole show out there. So part of my conversations with her, it was Lee's idea. He'd been working on it for decades. Certainly, it's his baby. You know, people should know who Lee is relative to his brand. But I was a little indignant on Kendra's behalf because I thought to myself, nobody knows her name. And she's the one in there, doing the hot, dirty work to make this beautiful distillate. And so I was talking to my husband about it, and he said, well, then you should write about it. I mean, literally, it was just Toby saying, you're upset about that? You should write about it. That's what you do. You should write about that. So Kendra was literally, I did a deep dive. I started looking into the history of distillates. That got me going all the way back into, the 16, 17, 1800s. And I started realizing that really women were the distillers. Men were providing the grain, but the women were the ones in their kitchen who were cooking up the excess. Yes, ma'am.
Here's the women for
Making
that.
something really beautiful for us to enjoy. So I started with the historical figures that are outlined in the book. I circled back to Kendra when I had a better grasp in my mind about really where I wanted to take this book. And I sat down with her. She was my very first interview. I will say that that first book, those interviews were a little difficult to come by because people didn't know who I was. They didn't know what my motivation was. And I've spoken about this before, but there was, in my mind, I was like, why are they so distrustful of anyone trying to talk to them? And I still have not discovered the answer to that. But as I moved through getting the interviews lined up and written up for that first book, it became a little bit easier as they started to see that a few others were allowing themselves to be profiled. And then people came to know me a little bit better because of those engagements, and it became easier and easier. But getting started was really difficult. I was not sure at some point. I was not sure if I was going to be able to complete. I wanted 40 combined, historical and current. I didn't know if I was going to get there. And when I would have those slow points, that's when I would work on simple syrups, and I would work on cocktail recipe acquisitions, and I would work on preparing um, food recipes that incorporated the spirits, and then making my whole street so happy by sharing what I was cooking. To see that bourbon bundt cake to 3 iterations, and before I was like, no, you're not giving me any more notes because you just want more bundt cake. I mean, this is beyond, we're not going to make any improvements on this now. Um, so yeah, that was the impetus for the beginning of the book, and now I am so deep into this and so passionate about the topic and so fascinated by these warrior women. And you and I have spoken before
Mhm.
that I'm of a different generation, certainly, but this younger generation, you think they would have things maybe a little easier, but they don't. They're working 10 and 12 hours a day. They're bathing the babies, birthing the babies, feeding the babies, changing the babies, doing schoolwork, cleaning up the house or not, doing laundry or not, sleeping 4 hours, getting up and starting all over again. And the fact that they're creative and passionate and making it all happen, um, I'm in complete and total awe
Oh, yeah,
of all of them.
totally. Absolutely. So you kind of answered my next question already. I was going to ask about the historical figures that you profiled in the book, but so you did some historical research first, and that to me is almost the pinnacle of my interest in all of this, the bourbon story. All of it is the history and how much of it revolves around women. And
Yeah.
everybody says bourbon is a man's game, bourbon is a man's drink. But when you go back and look at the history, and you even look at the medicinal factors of, distillates being used by what they were calling witches, but they weren't really witches. They were, these women who were actually healers. I this
Hmm.
this is way bigger than we thought it was originally. The history and the
Hmm.
women that were involved in it is just astounding, and it's fascinating. And so some of
It
this.
is. And I have discovered some of it's a little, I mean, a lot of these women, they weren't historical figures, right? So unless something interesting happened that they were connected to, nobody was writing about them. So they're finding historical records on these women can be sometimes difficult. Um, but there's still so many out there. You almost have to search for records of oral traditions in order to find them. But there are some fascinating and really, well, sad but funny stories about women in distilling, how they became distillers, why they became distillers. Some women, it was to feed their families, frankly. This was a source of revenue that was easily obtained, hard won, hard fought, but easily, marketable. Um, yeah, and then some of them have really hysterical stories. Like, well, the economic factor was pretty much a common theme throughout. But there was a woman up in Appalachia, um, up on a mountain. She and her large brood of children were making whiskey to sell. It was illegal. Sheriff came up there ostensibly to arrest her, and knocked on her door, and she came to the door, and he said, basically, we're going to have to arrest you. And she was like, I don't know what to tell you. They couldn't get her through the door. She had a disease that made her swell to enormous size. and she was not able to leave the cabin that she was living in. And when the sheriff came down the hill, the deputy came down the hill, the sheriff asked him, where is she? And he said, well, she was catchable, but not fetchable. So they just let her stay up there, so there are interesting stories about these women. And the ones from the 1800s, 1900s, those are really current stories. The stories go back centuries. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm equally, you and I can be equally fascinated on that topic.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. Absolutely. And then you take these historical figures, and then you complement them with an amazing array of current women in the industry in this book, and then you pair all of that with these amazing recipes that you've got in there. I mean, this book is a catch-all of just astounding information, and
Oh,
I,
thanks.
it leaves me hungering for more. Is there going to be a volume 2?
There is. So it was really funny when I was
Yay!
writing the book. You'll see throughout, there are these little blurbs randomly scattered throughout the book. Did you know? And so as I was doing research, when I would run across something that was really interesting to me, because I'm a neophyte in this, I'm still learning, right? Everybody's still learning. Thank God, that learning is so fun. So when I would see something, I was just jotting all these notes down in a notebook. And when I was writing the book and kind of putting it all together, I thought, how am I going to I want to get these in here because they're interesting. And my editor, my graphic designer and my editor, who I love, um, he was like, we should just make them little notes. All through the book, we'll just make them little notes. Did you know notes? And so even after I finished the book, that book, I was still, because I was continuing to do research, I was still making my did you know notes, which now I have a whole nother set for the new book. The new book is going to be very, very similar to this book. Um, I wanted them to be of a similar size. They're going to be the same dimension, but this one's going to be more pages. There's no way not to um, include some of the really fascinating women that I'm running into. And then I have all the historicals that I really love, that I think add so much to the storyline for women in the industry. So yeah, there's another one of those coming, and then I'm hoping. I think I could probably continue that line for a long time, except that now I'm becoming fascinated with Scotch and Irish whiskey and single malts and tequila and all the other distillates. So I'm not really sure. I was thinking to go over to the islands, to Scotland and Ireland, to do one about their industry and the history there, which I did include partially in the first book here, but more in depth, more specific to that. But who knows how it's actually gonna how it's actually gonna. I let whimsy carry me, so I just go wherever whimsy takes me. So right now, focus on the second book, which will be a reiteration of the first book with new content.
Well, I can't wait for that. And if volume 3 takes you to Scotland and Ireland, how can you go wrong? I mean, that just sounds like a
Yeah,
wonderful adventure in itself.
we might need to take Stirrups and Spirits on location.
Girls trip, I'm all for it. I'm in game. Let's go. I love it. I love it. So you have another project also in the works, I understand, that's not a
I
book.
do. It's
So tell
not
me
a
a little
book.
bit about that.
So one of the things I realized as I was coming to know these women in the industry, which I'm a girl, I'm a girl fan. I'm around them, and I can't talk, or I want to adopt them because they're, my daughter's age, and I feel like they needed to be adopted. But there were all these things that I thought might be helpful for them, and I wasn't finding an easy resource for them. And so at some point I thought to myself, they don't have time. They have negative time to cultivate something for themselves. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure it out. I don't have a lot of time either, but I have more time than they have. And I'm willing, at this point, I put my book on hold in order to develop a platform for them. So this platform is called Spirited Women Collective. We're launching our launch date is August 10th. It is a collection of spaces on the Mighty Network where we're going to do surveys on topics of interest to them so we can collect data and disseminate it among the women so they have a roadmap for where they want to be active. What topics do they want to concentrate their voices on and become active in to change the trajectory of the industry, to make it more diverse, to make it more equitable, to provide more opportunities. There's going to be a place for them just to chat, just to throw things out there and talk with one another, building relationships across the nation. So they don't have a lot of time to talk to and learn about because she's out in the West, right? They're not going to engage unless they're at an industry event. And when you're at an industry event, you necessarily have your consumer face on, right? You don't have time to take your hair down and just sit and talk shop with somebody in a way where you can build a real relationship. This gives them an opportunity to start that. It's going to talk about health and wellness. It's going to talk about how the law interacts with the spirits industry, how that applies to copyrights and trademarks and patents and employment law and equity. It's going to talk about, it's going to create a list of educational opportunities if you want to learn more. Here are some professional organizations you might want to look at. Here are some educational opportunities you might want to look at. Here are some foundations that help promote women and fund further education for them. So it just combines in one place things that are for your personal wellness and health, things that create social opportunities, things that help you find guidance on professional items. And so it's not a platform built by me. It's a platform that they will build. So I am populating content based on recommendations from my advisory board. Beyond that, the collective itself will be responsible for putting in their recommended content to share with the broader collective. So that's partly what makes me so excited, because it's not even something that's very hard for them to contribute to in a meaningful way, so they feel a part of something. So yeah, I am enormously excited about it. And I'm so grateful to my advisory board, because again, they don't have a lot of time to dedicate to anything like this, but they've been very generous in assisting me to get this off the ground.
This sounds like it's going to be a wonderful resource for everyone that's in the industry, and a place where they
Yeah.
can not only contribute their thoughts and their resources, but also gain resources from other people in the industry and collaborate with each other on new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. Wow. How cool is that? That's amazing. So once you get that launched and running, what's it going to look like for somebody new coming into the industry that wants to be a part of the collective? How do they get involved with it?
So there are only two ways to get in, because one of the aspects that all the women that I've spoken to, one of the aspects that was really important to them was to create this insulated environment. They love the consumers, and the consumers are so important to the development of their product. They need to hear from them in order to know what they need to be developing and creating and communicating next. However, in a collaborative environment, in a solutioning for a challenge environment, it really needed to be insulated. So you can only get in if you're invited by another member, or if you apply and there are gated questions, and I will personally be reviewing the people that are coming through just the portal, the link, to see if they meet the criteria to be included. Because we don't, while we love the consumers for them, we don't want them to become part of the equation, because then it changes the tone of the conversations inside.
Right.
So they can get invited by another member, or they can apply through a link and then wait for approval.
And it's limited to professionals in the industry only.
It is. It is from grain to glass, but it is limited to women working in some capacity inside the industry, in professional capacity.
Okay. That's amazing. It'll be a wonderful resource. And I would assume then at that point that, newer members to the industry can look to some of the more veteran members of the industry for maybe some mentoring, some coaching,
Yes.
in this as a resource too, to bounce
To give you
ideas
an example of what I see happening with this, we're going to try to build social events once a year, starting in the beginning once a year. We'll see how it goes and what their interest is, because this is really going to be driven by what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I think initially we're going to do one social event a year. And then I really feel like the real purpose behind things like this, that'll create the social aspect for them, where they feel comfortable going to someone. You know how you don't feel really great? I mean, if you walk up to somebody, they're a master distiller, you don't feel good about saying, yeah, my fermenter was overflowing and I couldn't figure out what to do. That may be not the icebreaker that you want. But one of the things you can do on the website, on the collective platform, is I forgot, I've changed how I've named, let's find a solution is what I've named it. So there's this space called Let's Find a Solution, where if they're having problems, they can post it up, and anybody who's on the platform at the time can see that they've posted something up, to see if there's something in their technical background or experience that will help them solve for a problem. Or they can post a video. So can you imagine somebody posting up a video of their fermenter overflowing all over the floor and going, what do I do? And somebody goes, oh, put this whatever in there, and it'll settle right down. That's kind of what I envision them being able to do. So by solutioning like that, they'll create relationships. By engaging at a social event, they'll create relationships. Those deeper relationships, when trust becomes involved, then you have collaboration opportunities. I just see it elevating and educating the women, where people like Sherry Moore are mentoring people like Tiana Saul. It's just leveling everybody up, and at the same time doing something really beautiful for the industry itself. So I just don't see a downside to it.
Yep, I agree. And that's something I've noticed specifically with the bourbon industry that I have not found in other industries. And not that I'm not a worldly industry person, but I come from a nursing background, and in the healthcare industry, the big phrase is nurses eat their young, and it's so true, they do. But in the bourbon industry, that's not the case. Everyone's out there to reach out a hand and go, hey, you're new, let me give you some advice, let me show you the ropes, welcome to the family. Somebody's rick house has a problem, and another distillery steps up and gives them a hand. I mean, historically, everyone is family throughout the decades that the bourbon industry has been what the bourbon industry is. And I find that to be magical. And there's not very many industries that are like that. And
people magic.
It is.
Yep.
It's a magical brown liquid that makes us all happy people and we want to work together. I don't know. But
You know,
but
Jane Bowie, when I was talking to her, and that was like a unanimous theme when I would interview these women. That was a unanimous theme throughout, is that they felt like the industry was family, that they treated each other like family. They squabbled, they jumped in and fought for, they supported and encouraged and cheered. All the aspects that you encounter inside a family, you encounter inside the spirits industry, particularly, in my view, in the bourbon and whiskey industry, that have been so concentrated in two states for so long, but are no longer. And I think this across borders expanse of people in the industry has made it harder for them to have those relationships because you aren't in people's back door. But technology can bridge that.
yep, absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's amazing to see the camaraderie that happens, and I started to experience that firsthand last year when I went to the Bourbon Women's Symposium for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
and I was a scholarship winner, and so I knew my mentor going out there just from a couple of phone calls with her, but I didn't know her. And so I
Mm-hmm.
hopped on a plane. I said, "This is so out of my comfort zone. I'm going alone to Kentucky by myself. Never been, here we go." And I walked into the ballroom, and here's 400 women who love bourbon. We're all here for the
Mm-hmm.
same reason. And somebody kicks out a chair and says, "Hey, do you need a place to sit?" Yeah, well, yeah. And their first meal, I made 12 new friends.
Yeah,
And
no mean girl stuff, except
no, there was none of that. There was no, who are you and what do you want, and nobody looked down their nose at you when you said, "Yeah, I like my bourbon with Coke or ginger ale or straight or neat or whatever." It didn't matter. Nobody cared. It was, "You like bourbon, so do we. We're friends." And it was wonderful. And everybody was so encouraging. It didn't matter if you wanted to build your own brand or have a podcast or decide that you wanted to be a cheese connoisseur and figure out how to do pairings. Even if you didn't want to become part of the industry, but just a fan of the industry, they were like, "Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are glad everybody's here." And that part to me is just, I love it. That's why I've gotten involved to this level that I have, is because everybody's just it's so much fun to work around.
Well, Tamara, human beings are tribal, right? We are. At our core, we're tribal. We need our tribe. That's where we're happiest. And whether that tribe is, our blood family or our adopted family or our bourbon women comrades, I mean, that's when you get us all together in one place, how are you not happy? You're with people who share your interest, and that's your tribe.
Right, exactly. So it's a lot of fun, and I look forward to seeing you soon at the symposium, because we're going
Few
to be there
weeks.
together. I know, I'm so
I
excited.
think there might be trouble. The two blondes.
You never know. So I
Kind of
saw you pick
trouble.
up your glass there a little while ago. Tell us what you're sipping on tonight.
So I'm a member of a private society. It's called Hillsborough. Um, it's out of Leaper Sports Distillery, close to Franklin, south of Nashville, Tennessee. This is their Southwell Symphony that you can only get if you're part of the secret society. And it is, look at that color. It
That's
is
beautiful.
so delicious. You pop that cork out of that bottle, and it is, oh, that nose is just beautiful. Mm. Lee is a talented man, I'm telling you. Mm. Golly,
That's
that's good.
beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I chose a cocktail tonight. I went with Blade and Bow, and I made myself an old fashioned. So I
Oh,
I
nice.
went
Hey,
I went old fashioned.
if you like old fashions, you need to try a sixth borough.
A six borough.
Yeah, I'll send you the recipe.
Is it? Wait,
It's
is
an
it?
it's an advanced copy. It's in the new book.
It's in the new book.
In the new book.
All
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait. So is volume 2 going to focus on distillers? Because I know that volume 1 pretty much focused on distillers.
This is broader. This next one's going to be bourbon bells and whiskey women from grain to glass. And so I'm actually working with someone not in a still house for the cover. So that's going to be interesting. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, this is one of the things I did realize because my focus was so narrow on the first book. But there were so many more women in other places in the industry that need to be acknowledged as well, and all of them are critically important. You cannot make this without all of them. You have to have the grain, you have to have the wood, you have to make the barrels, you have to have the stills fabricated. You have to have all of that before you can have this. So they're all really important. And so with this next book, I wanted to make sure I included people throughout the industry.
That's great. I can't wait. I'm so excited for your new book.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I so appreciate your time, and we look very much forward to the collective coming out and the new book coming out, and maybe a trip to the Isles over in Europe.
There you go. I love that.
Tasting some ancient Scotland whiskey. Oh my gosh.
Girl, that would make some great podcast episodes.
Wouldn't it make all kind of great social media content? And some of it we probably should keep between ourselves, and some of it we could we have a lot of fun.
What happens in Scotland stays in Scotland.
Well, I really appreciate you being on the show. I can't wait to see you in Kentucky in just a few short weeks. It's going to be a blast. And when the new book comes out, we'll have to revisit and go over the new book and have another
I
read.
love it. I love it.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll be talking to you soon. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Bye. Cheers.
Get your copy of Bourbon Bells and Whiskey Women on Karen's website, thepowerof3publications.com, and look for Volume 2 coming out soon on the same website. The Spirited Woman Collective project will be launching in August, so stay tuned for that as well. And as always, make sure that you follow Stirrups and Spirits on our YouTube and TikTok channels. And thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We'll see you again soon. Cheers.